Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
So welcome to episode 2 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of The Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I've noticed actually that's 2 weeks in a row I've called it The Song of Ice and Fire, but it's A Song of Ice and Fire. I've gotten that wrong, so sorry, I do apologise for that. Today, because of the prologue, our episodes are always going to be one out from the chapter. We're on chapter 1. Episode 2 is chapter 1 of A Game of Thrones, which is the first chapter to be named for a person. All the chapters will be named for a person. Right. Sorry for the little spoiler there. But this one's about Bran.
Bran's not special. Not that special.
Well,
anyway.
I mean, he's special. He gets the first chapter.
Right.
We like to start with letters from our listeners, but
yes.
We are recording this one very soon after recording the first one, so we haven't actually received anything yet. If you had suggestions for what we should do better, we promise to take them on board for the next episode.
Right.
We just haven't had a chance to see what you thought yet, but we're definitely open to your feedback, so please keep it coming.
Ghosts.harrenhal@gmail.com is the email address.
That's a good reminder. Well done.
Yeah. That's trying to pepper that in there from time to time.
That's professionalism right there. All right, so let's get started with a summary of Chapter 1, Bran.
All right. So
I didn't mean Bran should do it. I meant it's Bran. McKelly.
I will do it.
You do it.
Bran's busy.
Yeah.
So the chapter starts with Bran, who's age 7, en route to the beheading. He believes the victim to be a wildling. We hear of old Nan's fairy tales about wildlings and others. We meet Bran's father Eddard and his Valyrian steel sword Ice. Jon Snow is introduced as Bran's bastard brother. Just prior to the beheading, Jon whispers to Bran not to look away, or their father will know. When Ice is met with poor Garrett's neck, it slices through in a single stroke. Theon Greyjoy, valet to Lord Stark, kicks the head away when it rolls near him. Bran's elder brother Robb thinks Garrett died bravely, but Jon reckons that he was already dead from fear. Robb and Jon are both 14. Robb takes after his Tully mother. Tully is the name of his mother's maiden name.
Not a different type of mother.
She's
he has a mother and a Tully mother.
So his mother, who happens to be a Tully, she is fair-skinned, blue-eyed, whereas Jon is slender and dark of complexion. They race on ahead. Bran, he's riding a little pony, can't keep up with their big horses, so he just watches them go away. But Bran's father Eddard rides up to him after the older boys have gone ahead, and they discuss why the beheading was necessary. Bran thought it was because the man was a wildling and therefore likely to steal women and sell them to the others. Eddard explains that the man was a deserter from the Night's Watch, which makes him a very dangerous man. Robb and Jon find a dead direwolf and signal everyone to hurry on to catch up with them. There's turns out to be a puppy for each of the true-born Stark children, which excludes Jon. After much debate, Eddard allows the children to keep the pups. As they start to resume their trip back to Winterfell, Jon finds an albino pup that had been missed. This pup is for Jon. As well, Jon's pup is the only one whose eyes are already open.
Oh, I love it.
Yes.
The symbolism
is deep.
So the general discussion about this, I think we get a sense of Eddard or Ned's character. It's difficult to know how much of it is just sort of like typical northernness and how much of it is him, because obviously the northerners are sort of stoic and rigid, but he's also, shows some decency and compassion. The beheading is gruesome, but there is sort of a nobility to it, the fact that he does it himself rather than delegating it down to someone,
right?
And he's concerned for Bran, which I think is, he wants Bran to grow up and be a man, watch the beheading, but at the same time you can see a sort of fatherly concern that he's not too traumatized by it.
Yeah. But he also he's got a compassionate side to him as well. He's a well-rounded individual. Lord Stark. He gives in to the demands from his children for the pups that they find. Yeah. Which, every parent's had to face that battle from time to time. Can we keep it, Dad? I promise to take care of it. How many times I heard that before a guy gave in to getting my dog?
It's a lot easier to cave in when you're the Lord of the Manor, though.
That's true.
Someone else is going to be dealing with the mess, not you. His very last line in the chapter is about the albino pup for John, and John, I think, says, "Oh, it wandered off," and Ned said, "Or was driven away."
Oh,
which is it's an interesting. The symbolism can't have been lost on the characters. It's certainly not lost on the readers, but it can't be lost on the characters. I mean, obviously, they're a little bit freaked out by the whole situation.
Right.
And to say that is just a little bit hurtful, I think, to John.
Especially after John just said, for your 5 true-born children, he's already putting himself out there.
Yeah.
Eddard's like, whack, take that. Eddard doesn't pass up an educational opportunity here with Bran. He
a role model. A role model for us all.
He takes the opportunity to instill some understanding in Bran of their ancestry and some of the family philosophy. You know, he mentions if you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. And if you can't do that, then maybe he doesn't deserve to die. And that the man who passes sentence should swing the sword. And they get into this a little bit. Bran mentions that King Robert has a headsman. Eddard points out that the further you get away from the beheading, the more you lose touch with what death is. I think it's a ruler who hides behind a paid executioner soon forgets what death is the actual quote.
Yeah. Eddard mentions to Bran that the blood of the first men flows through their veins, and the first men also get a mention in the list of King Robert's honorifics. Again, just like in the first chapter, I really like that sense of ancient history.
Right, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, and in particular, it seems that ancient history is more meaningful to the Starks than to the general public.
Yes, yeah. We also we get to meet a few other characters, and we start to get a cast here, and we find out what happened to poor Garrett. If you were wondering what happened to him when we last left him and he was with the horses while Waymar and Will were dealing with the others, we discover that he did get away, but
brief respite.
Yes, things did not go well in the long term for him, though. But we meet Theon Greyjoy. We start to get the sense that he's kind of an irreverent, haughty kid. You know, he laughs when poor Garrett's head rolls to his feet and he kicks the head away. And he's kind of a clown, maybe, kind of just likes to keep things light, I guess.
Yeah, and he says a few barbed comments to Jon as well. So Jon, yes. You know, we get to see Jon's kind-heartedness and his relative maturity compared to the others.
Right.
He carefully looking after his brother Bran to make sure he behaves the right way, and his selflessness in giving up the pups to his half siblings, including the baby Rickon, who probably wouldn't know one way or the other.
Right, Rickon. Yeah, it would not have worked. They would not have been able to keep the pups, likely.
Yeah.
At least it comes across that way. Maybe Eddard's a bigger softy than I'm giving him credit for, and he would have caved regardless. But Jon's quick thinking and selflessness, you know, there's 5 pups, you have 5 trueborn siblings or children, and your house sigil is a direwolf. These are meant for your family.
You make me feel a bit sad for Jon.
Well, you know, they do reference early on, our first reference to Jon, they mention that he is Bran's bastard brother.
And he's not Jon Stark, he's Jon Snow.
Right. I think the quote when they're talking about the pups and after he gives up his opportunity to get a pup says, "But not the bastard who bore the surname Snow, the name that custom decreed be given to all those in the north unlucky enough to be born with no name of their own." That's a reference to the fact that Jon is Eddard's son, but not from his wife, Catelyn Tully.
Thank you for explaining what a bastard is to us, though, Michaela.
It's basically a lord who has a child.
Yeah, but it is a recognized bastard.
Yes.
He accepts that he is his son.
That's step one. Well, step one is fathering the child.
And then I do like that, actually. I do like the idea that, you know, in a given region, the given sort of lordly family, their bastards have a certain surname, which is somehow associated with the region. In the north, Snow makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we meet Robb. Robb is the heir apparent to Lord Eddard. He comes across pretty self-assured. He's kind of has a maybe a little bit of arrogance to him. You get the sense that he knows that he is going to be a lord someday.
I think the show kind of makes you think these kids are older than they are, but
I agree.
The fact that John and Rob are only 14 at this time is kind of it's a little bit eye-opening. I mean, I certainly understand why the TV show cast them a bit older, but the way they behave in the book is more in keeping with their age.
Yes.
And actually, John is even more of an outlier in his maturity and common sense because he's only 14.
Right. Because they're played by adults, it's hard to picture them as 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
But there's one exchange between Bran and Eddard that I like. Eddard rides up to Bran and checks on him. He asks him how he's doing, and Bran asks, "Can a man be brave if he's afraid?" Eddard's response is, "That's the only time he can be brave," which I think is very...
I like it.
Yeah, very deep.
Yes. And also true. I mean,
right.
If you're not afraid, you're not being brave.
Right. It's easy to be brave if you're not afraid.
There's nothing
of something
to make you afraid. Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of symbolism in this one. The sigil of House Stark is dead because of a stag.
Yeah.
The fact that the thing has 5 pups with the same genders as the Stark children. I mean, it's, as I said, not only we as the reader are seeing the symbolism here, but the characters in the book are seeing the symbolism. It's not lost on them.
Yeah. The fact that the pup, John's pup in particular, he's separate. Yeah. And he looks different. Yeah. And he...
Although, interestingly, it seems that Rob is the one who looks more different than John. It feels like John actually looks more of a Stark than Rob. Rob looks like a Tully. The other thing is, I mean, in the same way that the others were sort of a fairy tale until the prologue when we met them, so we didn't have long to think of them as a fairy tale because they just appeared. Direwolves too. Direwolves, no one had ever seen a direwolf before, but here they are. Not only true, but south of the wall. I mean, obviously they were expected to be, if they existed, to be a north of the wall creature. Right. But here's one south of the wall.
Yeah. So 2 chapters in a row, we've got some mythical creatures.
Exactly. So in comparison with the television show, the whole of this chapter is very much captured in the TV show. In the show, I noticed that they presaged the scene with the direwolf with finding the body of the dead stag.
Yes.
So I think that's laying on the symbolism even thicker, but also maybe it would just not have been clear that the stag had killed the direwolf if they just found the piece of antler in its throat.
Could have just been a stick.
Yeah, exactly.
Tripped and landed on a stick. Yeah, that it definitely comes across better from a visual point of view if you have a dead stag and then a dead wolf.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it might be even that the symbolism is more on point if both of them are dead. I mean, not to spoil what's to come, but this hardship is to follow for the people involved here. So
as far as we know from the book, the stag lost an antler. We know that much. Whether he survived and is skipping along through the woods just fine, we don't know.
Visions of the direwolf saying, just wait, don't run away. I took that opportunity to clear my throat there.
Yeah, good idea. Shoot, I missed my chance. We also get to hear some dialogue between Eddard and, in the TV show, is Will. We don't get to hear any dialogue with Garrett and Eddard in the book. Yeah. All it's mentioned is that there is some, but Bran can't remember later what it was. In the TV show, he goes on about, I saw them. I saw the other, or I think he calls them White Walkers. Yeah, I saw the White Walkers. This is a bit of a difference. I don't know how much.
Well, I mean, I think giving us the sense that Ned knew what the deserter was deserting for. Sure. We don't know, in the book, we don't know what Bran, because Bran's the reporter, we don't know what was said between Ned and the condemned man. In the show, we know that Ned heard, I saw White Walkers, and so in the space of a couple of hours, Eddard sees 2 fairy tales come to life in front of him.
Good point. Yeah, that's true.
The TV show also includes an earlier scene that introduces some of the other Starks, but the book readers will just have to wait for those.
Yeah. One thing that, it took me a while to realize that they don't mention the Rhoynar in Robert's titles.
In the TV show.
Yeah, in the TV show. They just say King of the Andals and of the First Men. Right, but, in the book, you get the King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and of the First Men. I guess they're just they've only got an hour. They got a lot to pack in. They're cutting out that 2 seconds they're getting back right there.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the ancient history of the peoples that populated Westeros, and I guess 3 different groups is just too much to cope with. Let's narrow this down to 2.
Yeah.
Robb was supposed to be fair and blue-eyed in the book, and he looked like the other Starks, really, in the show.
Yeah.
I guess that's just a casting decision rather than a conscious decision, probably.
Yeah. And one other tiny thing I noticed is in the book, Robb stood knee-deep in white snow, or in white, and Bran pushed through a waist-high drift. We're not really dealing with that level of snow in the TV show.
And this is the 9th year of summer. I mean...
Right.
So a little bit of background, again, trying all we can to avoid spoilers. So Ice, the sword that Ned uses, is made from Valyrian steel. So that's from a place called Valyria, of which more later.
Yep.
It's forged using magic, apparently, or perhaps by dragonfire. Those are the 2 stories behind Valyrian steel. Compared to ordinarily forged steel, it's supposed to be lighter, stronger, sharper.
Right. They call it castle forged. When that's usually when they're talking about Valyrian steel, they usually call it either magic forged or spell forged. And then when they're talking about your typical old steel sword, they call it castle forged.
Valyrian steel swords are in short supply. Apparently, the method of creating them has been lost.
Yes.
And so noble houses that own them sort of have them as prized possessions.
Yeah, they put them up on the mantle above the fireplace. Yeah. Also, there's mention of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. We discussed a little bit last episode about those rascally wildlings and how they're free folk that live north of the wall and don't acknowledge the king of Westeros, but maybe they acknowledge a king of a different sort. This Mance Rayder, we don't know exactly, but it's possible that they are more organized than we thought. And the claim is mixed up with Old Nan's fairy tales and Bran's imagination, so we don't exactly know what's going on. We're getting a report from a 7-year-old. So
true, good point. Robb uses the others as a curse, which is interesting. So again, sort of like that's nice, sort of building the fairy tales into the sort of structure and of the world.
You mentioned this for a while as someone who dabbles in this kind of thing.
Magic?
No. Do a card trick.
The 7 of clubs. So Bran's 7. Summer has lasted 9 years, so he would be known as a child of summer, I believe, as a result of this. But I don't understand how a summer can last 9 years. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, summers and winters are determined by the... So it's not magic, it's astronomy that I'm kind of interested in.
That's what I meant.
It doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me that you could have summers that last a long time.
Days last the same amount of time. We assume.
Wait, no. You know that days get shorter and longer as the year goes by, right?
Right. But they don't last... Like, if seasons are lasting so long, you would think something's going on.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the seasons are caused by the tilt of the axis of the Earth, and then as the Earth goes around the sun...
See, this is why we have him, for the science stuff.
Then the days get longer and shorter, and that's what causes winters, you see?
Okay,
so
right.
maybe the axis of the Earth is... the axis of the planet upon which Westeros lies is somehow precessing as the planet goes around the sun. That could happen, but it would become predictable, I think, unless it's chaotic in some way. It would become predictable.
Right.
But then I think later on we see that there are people whose job it is to predict the end of summer and winter. True. So maybe it is predictable.
Yeah. See,
I've talked myself out of this complaint.
Well, see, what you don't know is that Simon is actually Dr. Simon. He has a PhD. So this is why he knows all this fancy stuff.
It's not in English literature or astronomy, let me tell you. So we got a second mention for King Robert. Now his full title, including his last name, Baratheon. So House Baratheon's kingdom is the Stormlands, but as the royal family, they're based in King's Landing and the Crown Lands. Their sigil is a black stag on a gold background.
Did you say a stag?
I did.
Oh,
Isn't
dun,
that
dun,
fun?
dun.
Yeah. Their words are, ours is the fury.
Yes,
Not, we'll get stuck in your throat.
We also meet the Starks. There's reference to
Starks.
The Starks. They hail from Winterfell, which I believe is mentioned at the very beginning of the chapter. The Starks themselves are lords of the North, which is one of the original 7 kingdoms that make up Westeros. That is in the Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, as his title to the king. Their sigil is described as a direwolf running on a ice-white background. Their words, as you'll come to know, are "Winter is coming."
Now you have to say that with a Sean Bean accent.
You'll have to do
Winter
that.
is coming.
Yeah. And several times in this chapter, we get a mention of the lengths, the summer and
Right, I think
winter.
we just explained all this.
Right,
We just understood it finally.
They're always convinced. This could be the first year of summer.
Yeah.
They are convinced that winter is right around the corner.
Exactly. Yeah.
No matter how long summer has lasted.
Yeah. They do not hire those people who can predict the end of summer because they know winter is coming.
It's on its way.
People come along and they try to pretend that that's hey, I can tell you when winter's coming. Don't worry.
we
already know.
It's on its way. So, shall we do your favorite thing and discuss
Pedantry?
Let's
do it. So, why did Garrett desert?
I don't know.
This is the thing.
It's
So he was 8 or 9 days north of the wall. So, yeah, he was freaked out and frightened as he rode back to the wall. But he got back to the wall. He must have come through it via, presumably, a populated Night's Watch fort on the wall.
possibly. Although
You have an alternative to that. But if I were him, he's been north of the wall for 16 days. That's
right.
hardtack and melted snow.
Yeah.
I would have stopped for a hot meal.
Get back to your friends.
And a shower. For sure, I would have.
Seek comfort.
I don't know how. Obviously he was scared, but a hot meal and a shower would have helped.
Yes.
Sneaking through the wall and keeping on riding.
Calmed him down a little bit.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And you swore an oath. And okay, I'm with you. I can easily imagine being frightened enough to break my oath. But Ned's a stickler.
Yeah,
He's
you have to know this.
Yeah.
The wall is, it is in the north. You have to know that Eddard's not going to just be like, just
You saw a White Walker? Oh, dude, I'm sorry. Just go back to the wall.
turn around, get back up there, or head south. Your choice.
But again, so this is supposed to be pedantry, and I'll give George Martin credit here. This could be the absolute existential terror that the others have put into him.
Right.
It's making him make absolutely crazy decisions.
You remember in the prologue, they didn't see the others until the very last bit, but they felt the fear.
Yeah.
They felt fear for a reason they couldn't really describe. They just kept saying there's a sense of fear.
Yeah. And I think the one deviation between the book and the TV show that we've mentioned is that it's Garrett in the book and it's Will in the TV show. And Garrett is the more stoic,
right,
the more
years.
experienced, 40 years. Nothing should freak him out. And so maybe it goes to the fact that this really is something absolutely terrifying that even someone as stoic as him would freak out about.
Maybe he couldn't face living at the wall knowing that White Walkers actually exist. Although, we don't know that he saw,
That is
he was
true.
with the horses. He could have snuck up and, popped his little head up over a ridge and watched it all unfold and thought, I'm out of here. But as far as we know...
He may have just ridden off.
He thought, I'm done with all this. Yeah. So I was doing some research,
He's off again.
as I like to do. So some of the theories about how Garrett may have gotten past the wall without anyone noticing is there is a castle called the Night Fort. It's abandoned now, but it's the largest castle of the wall.
I do not know.
And there is supposedly a secret passageway that only members of the Night Watch
would know
about. Yeah, so he could have cut through there if he really just didn't want to.
Really wanted to avoid the hot food and his friends.
Yes. If he didn't want to seek comfort in any way, could have gone through the Night Fort, which is a dilapidated old castle.
All right. So maybe he didn't even notice the wall. Maybe he just rode on through the tunnel and just straight out the other side.
Like a cartoon, there's like a Garrett-shaped hole in the wall. Oh, well.
So, overall, I like the prologue, but I love this first chapter. I love the dire wolves and stag symbolism. It's a bit heavy-handed, but hindsight helps to see it as heavy-handed.
Right.
reading it for the first time, it's just like, ooh, interesting.
Yes, you don't mess around here.
I am going to love those little doggies. They're so sweet.
I think they're going to grow up.
Yeah, probably.
They're not going to be little for long.
Yeah. It's a great backdrop for introducing Ned
is,
and his personality. Hard and unyielding, but decent.
It's also a good intro to Jon.
Yeah.
I think we learned as much about Jon as we did about Eddard. He's a very deep
14-year-old.
Yes, for a 14-year-old, he's got a lot going on up in the old noggin. He's thoughtful and conscientious.
Ironically, we probably learned the least about Bran himself. I mean, he is only 7, so
yeah.
They don't really have personalities, I guess. So, but it's coming, like winter.
Bran is coming.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Please subscribe if you like what we're doing. Get in touch. We can be reached, as McKelly said, at ghosts.harrenhal@gmail.com.
Let us know what you would like us to talk about. Give us some questions, observations.
Yeah, we'll share anything. Well, thanks, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will be back with you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.